Our chair is Sanjaya Mishra from the Commonwealth of Learning, Delhi office, SEMCA, and he will take us through both the keynote as well as the following papers. A couple of housekeeping things. Those of you who are making presentations, if you have your slides and it's not been loaded, could you please see Ishan? Ishan is there. And if you give it to Ishan, Ishan will load it for you so that it's already on this thing. And also they go online, right, Ishan? So therefore it's important that you give your presentations to Ishan as early as possible. Sanjay, are you okay to start with? Any other housekeeping announcements, Ishan? No? Okay, the session is yours.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to this first technical session for this symposium. We have today a keynote presentation through a video, true to our ways of open distance learning approaches. Professor David Wiley, we will have his presentation on video, and then we'll take some questions or reflections and comments afterwards and discuss what he talks about. It would have been nice that we could have been here and he is either available on Skype or something, but I will try to take off the issues raised and concerns raised and we'll try to facilitate this discussion. After that, we have 4 presentations. 4 presentations include the first one by Dr. Karina Bosu. Karina, are you here? Yes, Karina. The next one is by Mina Huang. Yeah, Mina is here. Third one, Kerry DeHart. Kerry is there. And the fourth one, Haswira Nur Muhammad Hasim. So we have the 4 presentations. What we'll do, we'll go through this video first, and then I'll tell the ground rules for the 4 presentations, and we'll take one by one. I'll request now to start the presentation, which is about Open Education COPE framework. Dr. David Wiley is professor in Birmingham University. Birmingham Young University. He is one of the pioneers in open education and open content licensing, and he has done considerable research and particularly helping open schools in the US to start with using open educational resources, and he has been the initial propounder to make professors certify themselves, not the university certifying, the professors giving certification as an open approach to things. So he has been a pioneer in several grounds, and it has been always a pleasure to meet him and share new ideas. And as a researcher, I think this COPE framework is something great to look at to undertake research in open education resources.
Hello everyone, this is David Wiley. I hope you're having a terrific conference, and I'm genuinely sorry that I can't be there with you. But I thank you for the opportunity to still spend a little bit of time talking about open educational resources and about some of the research that we've been doing around open educational resources. Let me get right to it. Any presentation about OER should begin with the definition of OER. As you may know, open educational resources are any kind of teaching and learning material, like a textbook or a syllabus or a lesson plan. It's a teaching material that is free for anyone to access and includes free permission to engage in what I call the 4R activities. Those activities being reusing, redistributing, revising, and remixing those educational materials. So anytime you have any kind of teaching material or learning material that you have access to for free and you have free permission to engage in these activities, you've got an open educational resource. Now there's lots of hype about open educational resources, about how they're going to save the world, about how students are going to save tons of money and they're going to learn so much more from OER. And I'm afraid that this hype isn't really productive. It's the type of hype that we unfortunately have historically engaged in over and over again in educational technology. And for the last several years, I've been trying to dedicate my research to helping move us from this rhetoric over to specific concrete results, answering these questions about cost savings and about whether kids learn more or not in really rigorous empirical ways. So as we've worked on that, we've developed what we call the COO research framework. And this is, we think, is a comprehensive framework for asking all the kinds of questions that we'd want to ask to be able to understand the practical impacts on people's lives of open educational resources. Now, COO, of course, is an acronym. It stands for cost savings, gains in student learning outcomes, patterns of use by teachers and learners, and also student and teacher perceptions of OER. And when you ask these questions, and you ask them and answer them in rigorous ways, according to what we know to be rules for carrying out quality research, then we can move from hype and rhetoric over into talking about ways that open educational resources really are or aren't blessing people's lives. So I want to give some examples of research we've recently completed in the context of this COO framework. First, looking at costs and outcomes in the context of the Utah Open Textbook Project. The Utah Open Textbook Project has been going on for 3 years now. It's touched about 6,000 students and 25 teachers. And what the Utah Open Textbook Project is working in high school science classrooms and in schools and districts around Brigham Young University here. And we start with textbooks from CK12.org, the provider of openly licensed math and science high school textbooks. And we bring those textbooks to professional development activities over the summer with teachers, where we get them together and talk to them about OER and about the power of OER, and how OER means that you can take these textbooks and open them and change them and really customize them to meet your own needs in your own classroom. Typically, these CK12 textbooks are very long and very comprehensive. Many of them are over 1,000 pages long. But what we see is that our high school science teachers, at the end of this activity, have winnowed these books down to 300 pages or 250 pages, so they're lean and focused, and they cover just exactly what the teachers want them to cover and nothing more. And because in the schools that we've worked with, there hasn't been large access to laptop computers or tablets, the overwhelming majority of the students who have used these books have used printed copies of these books. This is an example, the cover that we made for the biology textbook, and behind that you can see the text and some of the artwork that came from the CK12 books, which really are just terrific quality. Now, that's context of the project. Getting to the cost part. A typical textbook that one of these schools we worked with would have purchased for high school science, it cost about $80. And typically these schools buy that textbook and hold on to it for 7 years. So the amortized cost of that book per year is about $11.42, $11.43 per year. Importantly, though, with these textbooks that cost so much that a district has to hold on to for so long, when you give that book to a student, the first thing you tell them is, now take this book, but no matter what you do, don't deface it in any way, because 6 more students after you have to use this book. Now, deface, of course, in this context is a kind of code for don't highlight in this book, don't mark important passages in this book, don't write or take any kinds of notes or draw things that your teacher drew on the board in this book. It's basically a hands-off experience for the student. Well, what we saw this past year, we just ordered and distributed about 3,000 books to students participating in the project for the 2012-2013 school year. And our average cost to print and ship a book was just under $5. Now, these books are very different in the way that students get to engage with them, because when you buy a $5 book, you give it to a student and you tell him to keep it forever. Please highlight in it, please write in it, please make notes and do things that help you remember the important concepts that you read in this book. And so you can see that this annual cost is well more than half for a printed copy of an open textbook compared to a printed copy of a traditional textbook. And of course, if you wanted to use the digital copy of the open textbook, there was no printing and no shipping costs at all. There would be a 0 in that far right column. So that's a little bit about the costs of the book. What about outcomes? We've been watching the student scores on the CRT tests. Those are our state standardized tests in Utah. And this chart shows the difference in scores in the years before teachers started using open textbooks and the years after they started using open textbooks. And what you see is an average increase of just about 6%. So in other words, if the average teacher had 70% of her students proficient in chemistry in the years before she was using open textbooks, in the year or years after she started using open textbooks, that has moved up to about 76%. So in the case of the Utah Open Textbook Project, we see that we can save significant costs, more than 55% of the cost of textbooks, provide a book to every student that he or she gets to keep and forever and mark in and take notes in, and there are also moving learning outcomes for students who are using these types of open textbooks. Now we've taken everything we learned about cost in this multi-year study, and we've wrapped it up into this web page at opencontent.org/calculator. Each of the blue underlined links on this page, you can actually drag with your mouse to the left or to the right to turn the numbers up or down, and watch the column on the right-hand side move up and down, and watch the bottom line at the end of the page show you how much money you will or won't save if you were to decide to use open textbooks. This is just a really fun practical application. The research articles, of course, are important, but if you really want to know in your context with the kind of book and the number of students and the amount you currently spend, are you going to save money or not? Here's a place where you can come to find that out. So that's an example of the kind of research we're doing in the cost and outcomes categories. How about use? I want to use a paper we recently published about Flat World Knowledge as an example here. Flat World Knowledge is a commercial provider, actually, of higher education textbooks written for community college and university students. They're delivered online like this under a Creative Commons license, but you can also buy them in print, buy them in audio format, and in a variety of other ways. One of the things that Flat World Knowledge does with these books, because they're openly licensed, is they provide tools for faculty members to edit, change, revise, update, remix, revise the books, and build custom books that they can use in their own classrooms. And we wondered, I wonder what kind of uses faculty are making of this capability. Not only does Flat World provide books with an open license, they provide a platform, and they're storing information about all those changes, of course. So we wanted to get in and look and see how teachers were using these books before they ever got to the classroom. Now there's quite a bit of data in this paper, and I've just pulled one table from it. But this table, I think, is the most illustrative. You can see the customization type in the left-hand column there. We're looking at 4 types of customizations, things where faculty either deleted words, pictures, or deleted entire chapters, where they went and reordered chapters, moved chapter 3 up to chapter 2, where they opened up a chapter and added new material to the chapter, putting a new picture in, dropping a video in, writing in a new example. And in this case, remixes in this paper we defined specifically to mean grabbing a chapter from another Flat World book and pulling it into the Flat World book that the faculty member was customizing. And you can see in the right-hand column of all the custom books that have been created, what percentage of those books contained each type of change. And the thing we realized as we looked at this ordering of the frequency of these changes is that the frequency of changes correlates directly to how easy it is in the user interface to make a kind of change. So to delete a chapter from a book is literally 1 click, and there are lots of custom books where chapters were just removed. To take a chapter and move it around and change its order also is a very small number of clicks. But to take and click into a chapter and start writing a new paragraph, or to pull in an image or a paragraph from Wikipedia or something like that, it takes a lot more clicks and a lot more work, and far fewer faculty engaged in that kind of activity. And because of the way the Flat World system was set up at the time of the study, it was actually very hard to pull chapters from other places into your book, and very few people engaged in that type of remix activity. So this is one of the examples of the type of research we're talking about when we ask, how are OER being used? How are they being used by teachers outside the classroom before the class even begins? But we'd also be interested in how do faculty use the OER materials inside the classroom? How are students using them in the classroom? How are students using them at home? Questions like that would also fall in the use category. And as a final example, in perceptions, I want to focus on Project Kaleidoscope. Project Kaleidoscope is an initiative that includes 8 community college and 4-year schools stretching across the United States from west to east. And Project Kaleidoscope basically begins with faculty members from several institutions, 2 or 3 institutions, getting together and aggregating open educational resources and pulling them together and combining something that they can use in place of the textbook they'd used in the past. And in the Project Kaleidoscope context, every institution that participated agreed to also adopt materials that they didn't participate in developing directly. So if teachers from community colleges A, B, and C got together and developed the textbook replacement for biology, faculty members from D, E, and F might have adopted those textbooks as well. So it's not just faculty aggregating OER for themselves, it's aggregating for everybody who's participating in the Project Kaleidoscope. In academic 11-12, we had 11 courses that worked this way that touched about 9,000 students, although we were only able to formally research about 4,000 of those. Another 5,000 of those students were people who just got involved indirectly, even though they weren't part of the project. So with the faculty and with the students that participated in Project Kaleidoscope, we did a number of surveys. We had over 50 teachers respond to the survey, and one of the questions we asked them was, compare the quality of this aggregation of OER materials to the quality of the publisher-provided textbooks you've used to teach this class in the past. And you can see here that the majority of people felt like the quality of the OER aggregation was about the same as the quality of the textbook that they'd used in the past. About a third of faculty felt like it was actually better quality than what they'd used in the past, and 11% of faculty felt like the OER were worse quality. So largely the same, although a big chunk also felt like the quality was better, and a small percentage feeling like the quality was worse. The chart doesn't change very much when we move to students and ask students, compared to other textbooks you've used for other classes that you've taken, how does the quality of this bunch of OER that you're using online compare to those textbooks? Again, over half say the quality is about the same, almost 40% say they're better quality, and in this case, less than 10% say that the textbooks are actually worse quality. So these are the kinds of questions that we'd ask to get at perceptions. Large-scale survey, over 500 students, in this case, over 50 teachers that were working with those students, asking them, tell us about the quality of this book, ask us about the value of this book. We asked teachers, were your students more or less prepared coming to class having used this book than they were in the past? And the results were very similar to the graph that's on the screen here. We asked students, imagine a course you're required to take in the future for which there are two sections offered, one that use textbooks, traditional textbooks like you've used in the past, and one that uses textbooks like this class where they were online and they were openly licensed. And almost 3/4 of students said that they'd prefer to sign up for the section that used OER. So trying to understand not just the cost impact and not just the outcomes. Of course, if we could save a lot of money and improve outcomes, that would be great. But if by saving money and improving outcomes everyone hated it, that would be bad. So understanding these perceptions of teachers and students and other stakeholders is important as well. So that's the COO framework in a nutshell. We're looking at cost, we're looking at outcomes, we're looking at use and perceptions. And we think that by really digging in multiple contexts at multiple grade levels and across multiple subjects and trying to understand these questions, we can put some rigorous scientific footing underneath open educational resources. And we'd invite you please to participate. This is my email on the screen, and the link at the bottom is the link to our research group where you can find the articles containing the data that was referenced in the presentation today. Thank you very much, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the conference. Have a great time.
We can all thank Dr. David Wiley at a distance. I think the presentation is very clear and to gives a framework for open educational resources, especially looking from 4 different angles. The same thing can be looked at from the point of view of cost, from point of view of outcomes, that this is a very important thing. Does open educational resources make difference to student learning? How do the students and teachers make use of open educational resources, and what are the perception of teachers and students with regard to the quality of open educational resources? And there are many other factors. For example, I can add to this perception picture that the motivation level of the teachers is very important to use open educational resources. What motivates them to use OER? What are the determinants of making people to use OER? What are the kind of attitudes people have towards OER will affect. As we know in education, teachers' perception about teaching and learning as such has significant impact on the way they teach. and conduct themselves in classroom. So the same thing can be also applied to OER. The teacher's perception about attitude towards open educational resources will have impact on how they use open educational resources. I think this is a very interesting framework for all of us to look at. I think I'll stop here and look to. We have enough time, I think, in terms of the time management for. The presentation was only for 20 minutes, so we have around 20 more minutes to interact and take on varieties of issues and concerns towards this framework that is presented by Dr. Wiley, and any other thing that we would like to bring toward make a research framework for open educational resources. I welcome you to make your comments.
One of the things that piqued my interest in what David was talking about was some of the data he was collecting in relation to perceptions of students. She's smiling at me. Hide. Perceptions of students about quality, and I would have wanted to know. Of course, David's not here. How did he define quality? If you're asking someone about their perceptions of the quality of something, then I would like to know what criteria that they're using to define quality in order to make sense of what the perceptions are. So who's going to take a shot at that? I don't know. Wayne?
I think it's an important question, Som, and I mean, to be quite honest, I think quality means different things to different peoples, and we need to think very, very carefully around context. I think one of the huge advantages of education is that we are all learners who have, deep experience of learning by virtue of our own experience. And even if we might not have definitive criteria for defining quality, we've got a pretty good gut feel of what quality is. And I think we can ask anybody in this room to think back on 2 or 3 excellent teachers that you've had and you'd remember them and you would be able to point out. So I mean, quality is a big challenge, and we need to keep thinking. If anything, I think the OER movement has the potential for making a huge contribution to quality, in the sense that if you've got a process, the development process, which is open and transparent, quality becomes transparent for all that are part of the process. And we're certainly seeing that within the OER University initiative, because our courses are all developed openly, and institutions whose courses are not up to quality can see. And this is without criteria per se. And I think that's one of the advantages of OER, is taking shared responsibility for quality, which can improve through open, transparent processes.
Well, not back to me.
I think so. This is a very important point. But from this point of view, what I look at the presentation, and I think quality has been taken as a fitness for purpose, and the statistics that is shown is from the point of view of student satisfaction in terms of the fitness for purpose, because we can define quality in our own ways, and one of the ways that most of the time we use is that if X is fit for our purpose, then it meets our standards and our quality. I think from that point of view, this statistics is shown. And of course, if you look at students' rating, in the classroom, the kind of things that we ask are, it's all about student satisfaction. Looking into some of the criteria of the teacher evaluation by student, it's something like that, looking quality from that angle. If you look at from that perspective, I think this is one of the way of looking at things to justify, to push forward open educational resource, to make advocacy for open educational resource. I think that's the preliminary work of quality and open educational resources, I think. But what I understand, what you are working and asking towards, is that a detailed way of looking at quality indicators for open educational resources. I think I stop that and give okay, Professor Mangalasundara first and then Paul.
Yeah. I think there are multiple ways. I would agree with Dr. Wayne McIntosh on what he defines, but in terms of defining quality, it's going to be different for different countries. Even though you may have a hallmark or a benchmark for what you call as the uppermost level for reaching, the open educational resources which are being built by different countries are going to be definitely different. And I think what is important is that a forum like this has to say what's the upper level, not what is the lower level. I think if you do that, all those who are graduating from different universities and different countries can all point to that, as opposed to saying this is what we can do in our country and this is what we can build in our educational resource and so on. So in that sense, I think what he meant, he probably left it undefined by saying here is the American textbook that we are converting and then we are considering. But it's the same thing with the NCERT, for example, in India, provides the National Council for Educational Research and Technology, and Teaching, provides all the textbooks that we need for high schools. They are written reasonably well, but then who will decide how to do this kind of translation? And I think it's an open-ended question in my view. And NPTEL, which I would talk a little bit about, also has a similar issue regarding what is quality, because what we are providing is not what most colleges don't want. I mean, they don't want them. It's too high according to them, but I think we are not going to say that. Open education resources should say this is the pedagogical standards to which we reach, and all building should happen up to that point. This is a viewpoint, but I think it can be discussed.
Thank you. Paul.
Yes, I'd just like to add, there was some studies done on the different stakeholders involved. There's a lot of, well, teachers have a view of what is quality, and students also. But stakeholders also include, for example, the parents who are probably funding it. And the parents, for example, view of quality is the brand name of the university and having a job after graduation. And that, in the same study, they asked the students' view of quality of their lessons and courses and professors, and they were interested in a career 5 years after graduation, not agreeing with their parents who are paying for it. So I think we've got to bring in the different perspectives, the different stakeholders' views. Even if we produce OER, which we think are the highest quality for these lessons, if they're not going to find a job after graduation, then I wonder, who are we serving? Thank you.
Thank you. Last, this, okay, Iraj.
My name is Nazir Sanghi from Open University, Allama Iqbal Open University, Pakistan. We started actually developing these materials long way back, especially from 2000 onwards. We put in a class. When we are looking actually not a program, but if we are looking at actually course level, then we are looking at the lessons and accessibility to the contents for the students. The navigation is the materials, support materials which are actually there, and in fact actually meeting those contents with the objectives of the course, what they have to cover, and then actually let's say trying to find out many other actually aspects within that. We tried this, and in fact actually we verified this with the student results, and students results, about 700 students were 3 to 11% higher when they used actually say the open resources, which were actually freely distributed them among them. Teachers were varied because they were actually teaching at different classes, and this study is already available. I think in ICD conference 2005 we actually presented these results. So accessibility, navigation, overall quality, we look from the student perspective. From the education institutions, we look at that those are meeting the objectives. The materials are actually, let's say, in line. The audio video materials which are actually present in some of the topics are actually also in line with those, and same way the students' results verify both actually. Thank you.
Thank you. Ras.
Thank you. I want to change gears a little bit. I was attracted to David Wiley's opening statements that there may be a hype related to open educational resources and their value to the community at large. And I want to relate it to both the kinds of positions that UNESCO and CALL have taken. Just simply populating the web with resources is certainly not going to address the needs of the masses that we are talking about reaching out. I think you need to have very strong institutional support buttressing those kinds of efforts. It's only then a resource becomes useful. Otherwise, it just remains a resource that may be underutilized or not utilized at all. And that is the current situation with open educational resources as they are available today. You can search the web and you can pick up any amount of resources that could be used, but they are not available to the bloke down the road, from even in a fishing village like Penang. If you just go across from the urban centers, that's not available. Access is not there. I think very often international agencies talk about access and equity in the same breath. They are not. Equity is totally different, and I think the availability of the resource in a usable form would be what I think we should be as a community going forward with, rather than saying let's produce more resources. Let's analyze the availability, let's analyze the use of resources. By who? By those who are already privileged or those who are not? If the purpose is to reach out, reach far, then I think you've got no choice but to say, where are the institutions coming in this? Where are the institutions coming in this equation? Thank you. Just an observation.
Thank you, Raj, for bringing us towards another track which is the main focus of this session, is a policy perspective of this session. In fact, and I think what you talked about is that access is necessary, but not the sufficient condition to make teaching learning materials really accessible to students. You need something else to do it, and in that, institutional commitment and institutional policy makes a lot of difference. That how do you use OER to teach your student, and how do you package your learning materials to help the students to get into the use of OER makes a lot of difference. And I think I also relate this to the policy perspective, that the OER declaration makes it, the UNESCO CALL OER declaration, to encourage the governments and institutions to adopt policy. And Vawasan is an example of adopting a OER policy. I think I'm not sure whether it is a first of its own as a university have a declarative policy. Many universities do use OER, but they don't have declarative policy on OER. But if it is a declarative policy on OER, might be Vawasan is one, but Wayne might like to correct me on that. But I think it's a very significant step from Vawasan Open University to commit to use open educational resources as a policy commitment. I think any other perspective on this? We have a couple of minutes more to take one or two more comments. Yeah. Anyone? Dr. Jaina?
The issue is that whether institution can have the policy or not. Problem is that it has to be within the broader framework of the country's policy as well. There are, I know in India we have institution which is ready to part the resources, but it at times the whole policy of the country prevents to do so. So I think that is what is to be looked at more deeply. if the institution will have to part the resources with them. And second thing is, in a growing economy like India, there is a huge private people coming in. They don't want to part the resources freely. Then why the taxpayers' money should, the government should part with the private sectors? This is the question which is coming up. So both the ends, the government will have to take a policy, look at that how this has to be done, then that can be enforced upon on the institution to part the resources. These are the issues needs to be discussed also, deliberated, both at the global as well as the country level as well. This is what I thought.
Anyone would like to take anything? Any other more point? Okay, thank you very much. I take this some of the points that has been deliberated on this, that we can talk about the COPE framework as one of the research framework for looking at OER, but I think all the COPE framework also need to look at issues from in detail from the point of view of quality from the perception at a different level, and then of course there are ways and means to look at quality and the policy perspective to emerge from the research work. There is a need to integrate practice, policy and research together. That's what I think we need to take from this presentation. With this, I would like to take this to the next level of and request the 4 presenters to come one by one. What we'll request, each presenter will be given around 20 minutes, will be flagged at around 17 minutes. I don't know how we'll be doing the flagging, but I will trying to flag it something like this so that you keep on this side. But the essence is the request is that to stick to the time so that we don't overrun the time, as Raj has requested us in the beginning session, that we have to stick to the time and be disciplined in our presentation. We will have around 10 minutes for question for each session. But what we will do at the end. We'll take all the questions at the end. We'll go through all the presentations. Then I would request you that keep your questions with the small little tags that are given in your bags, that you keep your questions written so that you don't forget your questions to be asked to the respective presenters. I have some interest